Today we're going to talk about the Food Safety Modernization Act and an overview of that statute. It's also known as FSMA. FSMA was signed into law by President Obama on January 4th, 2011, and it mandated a completely new way of regulating food and food safety in the United States. Under the old system, FDA was primarily in a reactionary mode. FDA relied on inspections of facilities, recalls when there were problems, conducting some audits and some testing of product after it's already manufactured. But in most cases, the agency was relying on suggestions on the kinds of things that facilities should consider when they're manufacturing. And it wasn't until there was a problem that the agency was able to really step in and try to do something about that specific food. Under FSMA, it completely changed the approach from a reactionary to a proactionary approach and risk-based. So under the old system, everybody was treated the same, whether you were small or large, whether your food was considered to be of high risk or low risk. Under FSMA, now companies that are larger have some responsibilities that are going to be different than companies that are smaller. Generally speaking, the FDA has been directed by Congress to focus on food safety where the food safety issues are the highest, where the risks are more important, where the kinds of failures that might occur could cause serious adverse health consequences or death. It doesn't mean that the FDA has changed its authority with regard to all of its other requirements for foods. It's just the focus was primarily with respect to food safety on the higher risk foods. FDA had actually flirted with this kind of a proposal a number of years ago with HACCP related to seafood and juice. The requirements under the Food Safety Modernization Act are in many respects very similar to HACCP, but they're ordinarily more rigorous. FDA was mandated by Congress to write a series of regulations in order to revamp the food safety regime. When you look at the way FDA developed these regulations, you might be reminded of the 7 pillars of wisdom concept from really the Old Testament. They came up with 7 basic major rules. And these rules, for the most part, are now in final form. And these rules cover the following main issues: preventative control for human food, preventative control for animal food, standards for produce safety, the Foreign Supplier Verification Program, a third-party certification regulation, sanitary transportation of food, and intentional adulteration or risks against managing risks against intentional adulteration. For the most part, the agency has taken many years to develop these rules, partly because of the need to work with industry and with consumer groups in order to try to measure and balance all the interests of those stakeholders within essentially the food safety program in the United States. And what the agency is now doing is beginning the process of implementation of these rules. Now, the implementation period is going to depend upon the size of company that's regulated and the kinds of risks that are involved. But generally speaking, over the next 18 to 24 months, companies will be required to put these rules, to implement these rules within their own food safety regimes. And FDA will begin to inspect facilities to those standards. I will say that although most companies are in the process of just understanding the regulations, it's also true that the FDA, when they come in to do an inspection, they will be learning also. The fact is that the food industry, for the most part, understands the safety risks associated with their products even better than the FDA does. And so the FDA will be most likely coming in with sort of a systems approach. Do you have all the pieces in place for a food safety regime without necessarily going too deeply into the substance? And that will probably be true for quite a number of years. It'll certainly be true for smaller companies. Larger companies are ordinarily already in the business of ensuring safety for reasons of perhaps being sued over some food safety problem that occurs in the marketplace. So they're already in the business of implementing widespread food safety regimes. It's the smaller companies that are relying on the larger companies in their distribution. And so those smaller companies will take more time, I think, for the agency to really begin to implement. When you read FSMA and the FDA regulations, you find exemptions and exceptions from the rules, the requirements. Now, FSMA is designed to cover food safety for all foods unless those foods are exempt. And we will talk in other videos about these other exemptions. But I wanted to give them to you here so you could just get a sense as to the kind of issues that Congress considered controlled by other food safety regimes. Food contact substances is one slightly different one. They are exempt from preventive controls, but not the Foreign Supplier Verification Program. The other ones we'll talk about with greater detail. That is seafood facilities that are in compliance with seafood HACCP, juice facilities that are in compliance with juice HACCP, and then low acid canned food or acidified food manufacturers and packers that are in compliance with FDA requirements for those kinds of foods. It's important for all food companies, distributors, exporters, manufacturers, importers to know that the old system is not dead. FSMA, as I mentioned before, is about food safety risks that can cause serious adverse health consequences or death. The serious kinds of food safety. Now, it's also true, it's minor risks, but food safety risks. And we also know that FDA, under the old system, will continue to sample, will continue to test, will continue to monitor for verification of compliance with even FSMA. And finally, there are quite a number of things that FDA does on labeling, nutritional labeling, on pesticide residue control in foods. None of these are food safety risks. However, FDA continues to have control and jurisdiction over that, and those systems will continue. So we will still see FDA sampling for these kinds of violations, even if they would not sample perhaps for a food safety issue. Thank you for spending a few minutes with us here at FDAimports.com. We remain committed to helping the industry and our clients understand and comply with these regulations as they're implemented by the FDA.